So I know I talk about paradox ad nauseam. Like synesthesia for me, it's just one of the major themes of my own spiritual creative life. Not just me, for many people. But I think a different way of talking about the same concept, as I realized through both singing and Alexander work, that optimal is not necessarily maximal. And what I mean by that is that, like, for example, with breathing, for years as a smaller singer with this limitation in my back and the rods, blah, 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 I used to think like, oh, I just gotta, air is at a premium for me. I gotta get more air, I gotta get more air. But I mean, really, it was the efficiency of how I was using it and this and that. But even within the mindset of like, gotta get more air, what that does is that you actually expand, like you hyper expand beyond what is sort of the natural ideal filling of your lungs. And then you're so expanded that it creates a tension that you can't appropriately release the air without pushing the air. And so just again, the whole balance of appropriate tension and the free flow of air, which is otherwise a very natural process, ceases to be when you just are so focused on getting the most amount of air in. It's not always that you need a ton, right? But it's how you're using it. It's not, what you're doing, it's always how. I had a moment in my early 20s, I was coaching with a conductor, and I don't know if he hadn't heard me in a while or he wasn't expecting the sound to be whatever it was at that moment, and he stopped and he's like, oh, your voice has gotten a lot bigger, or something, something to the effect that it was bigger and it was louder. And I think because he was a wise man and he, was about 70 something and he was talking to a 20 something small, high soprano, I think he realized for his own kind of due diligence so that I wouldn't get A, the false intellectual idea that, louder was better, and B, the kind of imprimatur that, I can just, sing big and broadly all the time and that could, really not be good for me physically. He was like, and why is louder better? I was like, because you need to be heard. I mean, I don't even know what I said. And he goes, because it gives you more contrast from your softest sounds. And so obvious, but I think it's often overlooked. It's not that the extremes are vaunted and celebrated because they're so impressive. They're only really impressive in the juxtaposition of their opposite, which is why we say, like, to truly know joy, you need to also experience sorrow. I remember even as a kid, I heard this line that, like, to be truly beautiful, at some point you must also be truly ugly. So, like, there's some beauty mark or flaw or something about you that is a little off, and that actually is, like, what makes you so compelling and attractive and interesting. And, again, the idiosyncrasy, or what some voice teachers will even call the pathology in the voice, is sometimes, especially like in pop singing, it's what makes the voice or the persona so beloved. And so can we find a healthy way to integrate the two? But yeah, there is no up without down. And so in all art, whether it's the visual arts or the musical ones, the performance arts, there's always some schema for chiaroscuro and this balance of light and dark. And, if it's all flat, if it's all one color, it's why I find going to the modern theater, musical theater generally, so not satisfying. There's so many wonderful things about it, but the sound is so over amplified. You can be, sitting in the front orchestra and they're blaring the music over microphones. I understand they don't always want to spring for a full proper orchestra, so then they, are trying to figure out the balance for that show, and maybe there's too much brass, so then they have to amplify the strings or this or that. But you really can't, or I feel I don't get to hear the singer behind the mic, which is like kind of the point of all vocal training or any kind of actor training, is to get to that unique individuality that's coming out through the more universal schema of the character that they're portraying. And that beautiful balance, again, that's a form of light and dark, right? Of this paradox. And so louder isn't always better because, yeah, you need to be heard, you need to have cut, but it doesn't have to be loud and broad and big. It's just that it gives you so many different colors then to play with in between.